Two warships sailed into the most watched stretch of water on the planet, and in doing so, sailed into the last mistake they would ever make. The Strait of Hormuz does not forgive. And on that moonless morning, neither did the USS Arleigh Burke. There is a particular kind of quiet that exists in the hours before a battle, not peace, not calm. Something colder than both. It is the silence of a predator that already knows the outcome. A silence where systems breathe, sensors pulse, and 280 men move through their duties with the practiced stillness of people who have done this 1,000 times in rehearsal and know, tonight is not rehearsal. 4:17 in the morning, the Strait of Hormuz. The sky is black, and the water is black, and somewhere in that darkness, two Iranian warships, the Sahand and the Dena, Moudge-class frigates, 3,400 tons each, have made a decision that cannot be unmade. They turn their bows toward the Burke. No warning, no hail, no last-second hesitation, just the rumble of aging engines pushing steel through black water at flank speed. Just two crews who believed, in their hearts, that geography was on their side, that the strait's 21-mile width would compress American power, that the maze of oil tankers threading the channel would blind American sensors, that the coastal radar installations watching from Iranian shores would give them the edge they needed. They had no idea. They had no idea that they had been tracked for 6 hours. They had no idea that as they made their approach, they were not hunting. They were being hunted by a ship that had already run the engagement 14 different ways in its digital brain and selected the 3 most likely outcomes. A ship that, even now, was waiting, watching, computing. The USS Arleigh Burke is not simply a warship. She is a philosophy made of steel and software. 40 years of iterative destruction, refined with each generation, 9,200 tons of displacement, 4 General Electric LM2500 gas turbines producing 100,000 shaft horsepower, and at her heart, the Aegis combat system built around the SP-1D phased array radar. 4 fixed panels, one facing each direction, each containing thousands of individual emitters capable of tracking over 100 targets simultaneously while guiding interceptor missiles to kill them. She does not sleep, she does not blink, she does not guess. The Strait of Hormuz is, by the numbers, the most surveilled patch of ocean on the face of the Earth. P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft circling at 30,000 feet, Virginia-class submarines prowling silently beneath the surface, and destroyers like the Burke maintaining what the US Navy quietly calls persistent presence. A diplomatic phrase. What it means in practice is this: we never leave. The Iranians understand this water better than almost anyone. It is their front yard. Their strategic doctrine has been built around it for decades. Swarm attacks, asymmetric tactics, the idea that confined geography can strip away the advantages of a technologically superior foe. They have wargamed these scenarios. They have planned. They have trained. What they have consistently failed to account for is the gap between a simulation and a warship that has been watching you since you left port. As the Sahand and Dena accelerated toward their target, the Burke's Combat Information Center was already alive with the quiet efficiency of a machine about to demonstrate its purpose. Alarm tones, the soft green glow of radar screens, a tactical action officer watching 2 orange contacts close the distance, his expression giving nothing away. They thought they were beginning an attack. They were walking into a trap that had been set 6 hours ago. The moment was precise, clinical, inevitable. At 14:22 in the morning, the Sahand's fire control radar locked onto the Burke. Not a scan, not a warning pass. A hard lock, the specific, unmistakable radar signature that tells any naval system exactly one thing: weapons are being prepared. Firing solutions are being calculated. Something is coming. Inside the Burke's Combat Information Center, the alarm tones changed pitch. Threat warning. Missile system active. Every person in that room felt their pulse shift, not from fear, but from recognition. This was the moment they had trained toward, the moment the calculus became real. The tactical action officer's voice was measured, precise. He didn't need to speculate. He didn't need to wait for confirmation. The radar signature told him everything, and the Aegis system had already told him more. By the time the first alarm sounded, the system had already evaluated 14 different engagement scenarios, weighted each by probability, and identified the 3 most likely. It had already begun assigning weapons to intercept profiles that hadn't launched yet. The captain's voice came through the 1MC speaker. Flat, controlled, final, battle stations, all hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. 280 sailors moved, not chaos. Choreography, damage control teams sealing watertight doors, engineering crews confirming redundant power, weapons officers verifying inventories. The Burke transformed, not in 90 seconds because men were afraid, but because process had made fear irrelevant. 90 seconds. A warship at peace, a warship ready to kill. 4 missiles left the Iranian frigates, 2 from the Sahand, 2 from the Dena. Chinese C-802 reverse-engineered anti-ship cruise missiles. Not cutting-edge weapons, these designs date to the 1990s, but do not mistake old for harmless. Each one carried 165 kilograms of high explosive. Each one flew at Mach 0.9. Each one in its terminal phase would drop to 5 meters above the surface surface of the water and skim in so low that detection windows compressed to seconds. The Iranian commanders knew what they were doing. They weren't trying to sink the Burke with this salvo. They were trying to saturate her defenses, make her expend expensive interceptors, create confusion, open a gap, classic asymmetric logic, force your enemy to spend millions defending against weapons that cost thousands, and eventually the math catches up with them. It's a sound theory. It requires your weapons to survive long enough to reach the target. At 42 miles, the Burke's SP-1D radar locked all 4 inbound contacts. 42 miles. The Iranian missiles had barely settled into their flight profiles. At 38 miles, firing solutions were calculated. At 35 miles, the combat system authorized engagement. The first 2 SM-2 standard missiles launched at 1425 from the forward vertical launch system cells, 2 pillars of fire climbing into the black sky, tail fins actuating, Mach 3 acceleration already compressing the distance. These aren't simple fire-and-forget weapons. They use inertial guidance for the mid-course phase, receiving real-time command updates from the ship's radar, homing in their terminal stage on the radar energy reflected back from the target. They are precise, they are fast, and at this moment, they are merciless. At 14:26 a.m., 28 nautical miles from the Burke, the first Iranian missile ceased to exist. The SM-2's blast fragmentation warhead detonated close enough to shred the airframe. The radar return showed the target breaking apart, tumbling into the sea in pieces. 11 seconds later, the second missile met the same fate, intercepted at 25 miles. 2 down, 2 still coming. Now the ESSM, the evolved Sea Sparrow missile, took the relay, smaller than the standard, faster at Mach 4, capable of 30 G turns that defy physics as most people understand it. The Burke launched 2 at 1427 from quad-packed cells, and both missiles climbed and dove with the focused purpose of guided lightning. The third Iranian missile was killed at 12 nautical miles, the fourth at 8. Total elapsed time from launch detection to final intercept 2 minutes and 41 seconds. The attack was over before most of the crew had reached their battle stations. 4 missiles launched, 4 missiles destroyed, 0 hits, 0 damage, not a scratch on the Burke's hull, not a single American sailor touched. The mathematics of modern naval air defense playing out exactly as every Pentagon simulation predicted. The Iranians weren't done.
The Sahand and Dena opened fire with their main guns, the Fajr-27, a 76mm naval gun capable of putting 85 rounds per minute into the air. Both frigates poured shells toward the Burke's last known position. The strategy was the same as before. Volume, saturation, force the Americans to react, to spend, to make a mistake. What they didn't account for was the Burke's ANSLQ-32 electronic warfare suite. This system doesn't fire back. It does something more elegant and more devastating. It creates ghosts. The SLQ-32 detected the Iranian fire control radars guiding those incoming rounds. Then it began broadcasting powerful jamming signals on the same frequencies. False targets, phantom radar returns, echoes of a ship that wasn't where the screen said it was. The Iranian gunners believed they were tracking the Burke. What they were actually shooting at was an electronic mirage. Shells splashed into empty ocean, 400 meters off target, round after round, wasting ammunition, wasting time, and in doing so, revealing everything: the exact positions of the frigates, their radar frequencies, their engagement capabilities, their real-time tactical decisions. They were not fighting a ship. They were fighting a system, and the system was learning everything about them in real time. At 4:30 in the morning, the captain of the USS Arleigh Burke gave 2 words: weapons free. The Iranians had fired first. They had launched anti-ship missiles at a United States warship in international waters. Everything that followed would be measured, proportional, and absolutely, utterly final. 2 SM-2 missiles launched at 4:31, but this time on a surface attack profile. Low trajectory, high speed, no dramatic arc toward the sky. These missiles flew flat and hard and fast, directly at the coordinates the Aegis had been refining for over 2 hours. The Iranian frigates detected the launches. They tried. Hard turns to port, hard turns to starboard, their 30mm close-in weapon system spinning up to 4,000 rounds per minute. Maneuvers that might have worked against weapons of a different generation, against anything slower, against anything less certain of its own trajectory. The first SM-2 struck the Sahand amidships at 4:32 a.m. 1,558 pounds of missile, traveling faster than a rifle bullet, delivering its kinetic energy into the frigate's superstructure before the warhead detonated. Blast fragmentation tore through aluminum bulkheads. Fire erupted from the main deck. Secondary explosions followed as stored ammunition cooked off in cascading detonations. The second missile hit the Dena 8 seconds later. Same impact point, same result. 2 Iranian frigates, mission killed in under 20 seconds. But here is what separates the Burke's engagement from simple destruction. Those were not killing blows. They were deliberate. The missiles had been aimed at engine rooms and combat information centers. The goal was not to send 240 sailors to the bottom of the strait. The goal was to stop the threat, and then let it burn. Leave them afloat, incapacitated, unable to fight, alive. That precision, in the middle of a naval engagement, in the dark, at range, against maneuvering targets, that is a statement as loud as the explosions themselves. At 4:35 in the morning, new orders arrived from Fleet Command. 2 words, the same weight as the 2 that came before, but carrying an entirely different meaning: ceasefire. The captain acknowledged. The Burke's weapons systems returned to standby. The VLS cells went quiet. The targeting radars pulled back to their passive watch mode, still tracking, always tracking, but no longer pointing. Dawn was breaking over the Strait of Hormuz, the sky lightening from black to the color of old iron, and in that half-light, 2 Iranian warships drifted, burning, their superstructures torn and smoking, their engines dead, their crews, men who had woken that morning believing they were part of something historic, now fighting fires, calling for help, trying to stay alive. Iranian rescue vessels were allowed to approach. The Burke did not interfere. She simply watched, as she had watched all along. The numbers settle onto the page with a weight that requires no commentary. Iran expended 4 anti-ship cruise missiles, approximately $1.2 million each, $4.8 million in failed attacks. Add 3,400 rounds of 76mm ammunition, roughly $100 per shell, another $340,000 wasted on empty ocean. The 2 Moudge-class frigates themselves, representing over $400 million in construction costs, training, and operational deployment, now sat crippled and burning, their tactical value reduced to 0. Total Iranian expenditure, tens of millions of dollars in assets destroyed or rendered useless, hundreds of sailors dead or wounded, classified figures that the families of those men will carry for the rest of their lives. The United States fired 4 SM-2 interceptors at approximately 2 parts, $4 million each, and 2 ESSM missiles at roughly $900,000 apiece. Total American expenditure, approximately $11.4 million. 0 American casualties, 0 damage to the Burke, 0 interruption to normal patrol operations. She never used her Phalanx close-in weapon system, the 20mm rotary cannon that fires 4,500 rounds per minute. It never needed to activate. The engagement was decided at ranges where the Iranians couldn't even see their target. The ratio is staggering. But the ratio is not the lesson. The real lesson has nothing to do with dollars. It has to do with the distance between confidence and knowledge. The commanders of the Sahand and the Dena were not foolish men. They understood their water. They had studied American doctrine. They believed, genuinely, that geography would level the playing field, that 21 miles of confined channel, packed with tankers and monitored by shore-based radar, would force a technological superpower to fight on their terms. They were wrong not because their intelligence was bad, but because their imagination could not encompass what they were actually facing. When the Burke's SPY-1D radar locked those frigates 6 hours before the first shot was fired, the engagement was, in the truest sense, already over. Every subsequent movement of those ships was being tracked, analyzed, incorporated into firing solutions that updated themselves automatically. Every turn they made was data. Every system they activated was a signature. Every decision they made was known before they acted on it. They brought a regional conflict to a fight conducted at global scale, and they never understood the difference until it was too late. History, when it records this engagement, will focus on systems, on missiles, on radar, on the Aegis combat system and its kill chains and its intercept geometries. It should also pause for just a moment on the men, the 280 sailors aboard the Burke who trained for years to perform those 90 seconds with perfect precision, and did. The tactical action officer who watched 4 missiles come toward his ship and responded not with panic but with the quiet authority of someone who had already lived this scenario 1,000 times in simulation, and understood, with cold certainty, what needed to happen next. The captain, whose 2 words, battle stations, launched a choreography so well rehearsed it resembled, from the outside, something almost casual. Something that looked against the violence of the moment, almost like routine. And yes, the Iranian sailors, the young men aboard the Sahand and the Dena who were following orders, who believed in their mission, who woke in darkness and sailed toward a target they never had a real chance of reaching. They died or were wounded not because they were cowards, but because the men who sent them did not understand what waited for them in those waters. That distinction matters. The weight of this engagement is not a trophy, it is a record, a demonstration of what modern military technology, training, and doctrine can do when brought together at the highest level of readiness. It is also a warning. By the time the sun fully rose over the Strait of Hormuz that morning, the engagement was complete. The Burke's log would record it as a successful defensive action followed by proportional counterstrike. Future briefings would reference it as a textbook demonstration of layered naval air defense. But somewhere on those burning hulks, drifting in the morning light, there was a different kind of record being written. In the silence of wrecked combat information centers, in the stillness of engine rooms that would never turn again, in the fact that those ships, which had set out in darkness as instruments of national power, ended their mission as wreckage, attended by rescue boats, watched over by a destroyer that never moved, never raised its voice, and never missed. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. It turned out that wasn't close enough. There are certain truths in the world that reveal themselves only in the moments when theory meets reality at flank speed. One of those truths is this: Some advantages cannot be compressed by geography. Some distances cannot be closed by will alone. Some systems exist at a level of precision and lethality that places them, for all practical purposes, in an entirely different category of warfare. The USS Arleigh Burke sailed on with the dawn, her position in the strait unchanged, her mission unchanged, her crew having done what they had been trained to do, perfectly, completely, and without ceremony. Persistent presence. She never left.